Hi everybody, Dr. Ethan Ciment here, your plant-based podiatrist at Chelsea Foot and Ankle in New York. I want to talk to you about pediatrics, kids. The field of Podopediatrics is actually really complex and it's diverse and there's a lot to treat in children. Unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues sort of act like, I'm not a pediatrician, I don't really want to treat your kid. And that's unfortunate because for those of us who studied it and who understand it, Podopediatrics is an opportunity for us to do something for kids that we can't really do for our skeletally mature adult patients, and that is change their trajectory in a biomechanical sense so that as they develop, as they grow, as they reach skeletal maturity, they can become closer to normal. I hate that term, but it's all relative, I suppose. A lot of times pediatricians in this city send their patients to me because they can immediately spot something that looks like it's abnormal to them, like the kid is pronating. In other words, there's the joint under the ankle, which is the subtalar joint, which does like high arch, low arch, inverted, everted. They find that the kid just standing is just really everted, like their foot is just collapsing in on them. And I'm here to tell you that at times that is a completely normal finding, and at other times it's obviously not. And that's because as the human foot goes through its very complicated process of evolution and growth, there are periods of time where having a relatively more higher arched or relatively more lower arched foot is normal. So when we talk about children who pronate, I would tell you that most children pronate, just like most adults pronate. Pronation is a normal part of movement. It's not the pronation that is a problem, it's the excessive pronation, that excessive range of motion that keeps you locked in a more flat-footed position and not allowing you to fully return to normal or neutral. That's where problems can result. And so when you are evaluating children, there are a lot of things to consider, and certainly as foot and ankle experts, we podiatrists understand how to evaluate children probably better than anyone, and a full evaluation of the lower extremity does include the knee and the hip. Those are really important because the knee being sort of a sagittal plane and up-down plane, force generator and transmitter versus the rotation that happens in the ball and socket joint at the hip. A lot of these issues are interrelated. There was a prevailing theory when I was in school, back in the year of the flood, that all these issues started at your feet and that these forces just transmitted up the human skeleton. Never really made sense to me, and the longer I've been in practice, the more I begin to realize that that's not necessarily always the case. In fact, more often than not, the issues stem at the hips, and then from the hips, it's sort of like a shock wave that goes out, up and down throughout the body. If there is any kind of abnormal biomechanics at the hip, whether your hips are externally rotated, internally rotated, a lot of those rotational problems at the hip are compensated for one or two joints down or one or two joints up. And so a rotational issue at your hip can throw your shoulders off, it can throw your feet off. And these are all interconnected things. And when we are doing an evaluation of both adults as well as kids, this is something that we look at in everybody, because how you move, your foot does not exist in some sort of splendid isolation at the bottom of the body. It is the mobile adapter of the human skeleton, and as it can adapt in the middle of movement, those forces translate up, and based on restrictions or availabilities in range of motion at your knee or your hip, your SI joint and your spinal joints and further up, that will largely dictate how easily, how pain-free you can move or not. And so doing a pediatric evaluation, a podopediatric evaluation, in my opinion, is critical. All children should be seen by a podiatrist, certainly before the age of 5, preferably before the age of 3. And while unfortunately this really does not happen too often, I think we need to start changing the way we think about this. We need to start thinking about this in terms of, well, kids go to the dentist, kids go to the pediatrician for an internal medicine checkup, and kids need to go to the podiatrist. Seriously, because what happens in your feet at an early age largely dictates issues that you can have later in life. And our ability to intervene when you're 3, when you're 5, or even when you're 10 or 15 is so much more impactful than when you come into the office, skeletally mature, an adult who has fixed biomechanical movement patterns that are much harder to break. Not to say that it's impossible, this is what we do all day. We get people back to well, but it's so much more work, and it's so much more easy to impact a lasting change if you do this in early childhood. So please, if you have children, if you have friends and family who have children, make sure that they get their kids' feet checked at least once early in life, and regularly if recommended by their foot and ankle expert. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good day.